We need to make sure that the economic environment here is good enough for people to have a good standard of living and a good quality of life. Innovation is at the center of our business, and we cannot innovate if we take the exact same people who have done the exact same thing.
Shalini, welcome.
Thank you, Joanne.
It's such a pleasure to have you. I don't think it's an understatement to say that you're a bit of a figurehead when it comes to women leaders in Mauritius. You've climbed your way by yourself up the ladder at Accenture, and you're now a managing director at the technology pole, I should say, technology arm of Accenture Mauritius. So I thought for today's podcast, we'll address it from a slightly different angle, and we'll go based on values that speak to both of us, and I think values that you have seen reflected at Accenture. And the first value I want to talk about is meritocracy. One of the reasons why, when I left Mauritius when I was 18 years old, I didn't think I would come back. I didn't feel at the time that there was a place for me back here in the profession that I practice. When I came back 10 years ago, I was surprised to see that things had changed. Perhaps not to the extent that it was in Europe, but that things had changed and there was more democracy, I would say, in the legal profession. How has meritocracy affected your journey as you've come up the ladder at Accenture?
Well, Jeanne, thank you first for the opportunity. And I can see some common things here. I also left the country after my HSC with the thought that I will never come back again. And the reason that I actually didn't think that I would come back is basically what everybody thinks about the country, is that if you don't have a name, if you don't have something to come back to, there is no future for you here. So it's the reason why I actually stayed away for 14 years. I graduated as an engineer. I got a job right away in France after my graduation in another multinational, not Accenture, but another multinational. And I actually paved my way, and I was brought up with a direct correlation between hard work and results. And this is what I actually went by at that time, and I still go by. Then, 9 years of professional experience, then the feeling of getting back home kicked in, and I wanted to come back here and actually try it out and see how it would go, actually. That was back in 2009, and I joined Accenture. I do think that I have been fairly lucky to have been in such an environment. To be honest, I am not sure that I would have been in my position had I been in another company. See, within Accenture, the rules are quite clear. We have objectives, we have priorities. I have been given the chance to develop my other skills, my soft skills, my leadership skills. And I've paved my way, actually, I would say, as managing director today. Since December last year, I also manage other entities in other countries like Vietnam and Morocco. So I like to think that this is the result of my hard work. It's the result of what actually I am. It's the result of what I display, and not the result of what my name is or who I know. And I think that's a situation that makes me super comfortable, actually. And I know that in such a structure, I will progress until I reach let me call it like this, the limits of my incompetency, when I cannot progress anymore. But I know that, I'm the soul. I would be able to craft my career in such an organization.
And you've always felt that you were given the tools and the opportunities regardless of your gender?
We have to be pretty honest about the gender issue. There are certain things that makes us actually unequal. As a woman, I was on maternity leaves 2 times. And what comes after maternity, and I'm sure you know about that, it's the extra work that you have to do, and you're tired, both mentally and physically. So the playing field is not the same, right? So whether you want it or not, while you are bringing up your family,
You have to make sacrifices.
you have to make sacrifices. You either have to sacrifice your hours of sleep, or you have to sacrifice your the number of hours that you're putting in your work. Then I think what it means is that you have to accept that your career would progress at a different pace, and this is what I accepted at that time. But then when I came back, I was given actually the necessary requirements, the necessary environment to actually make both work. In terms of, for example, my boss at that time was very flexible with regards to what role I would be taking and how that fits with my role of being mother to infants, actually. So I think that was a result of Accenture providing me what it needs to still be able to continue with my career while taking care of my family. That meant flexi, that meant I could do part-time at some point. That meant that maybe I was given a client that was less demanding. So all these things actually helped me not being disconnected from work and not having to make that choice of leaving my profession.
Obviously, DEI is now at the forefront of everybody's conversation, everybody's talking about it. So what you're telling me is that even at the time, I guess your children are a bit older now, yes. Even at the time that sort of the culture of diversity and inclusion was embedded within Accenture's culture?
Yeah, the commitment of reaching parity, 50-50 by 2025, was taken 10 years ago, I think, or more. I can't remember the exact date, but Accenture actually boldly took a public commitment that we will reach gender equality by 2025 with more than 35% of women in leadership positions. So when you say that out loud, it means that you have to make sure that you have the proper structure and you are implementing the measures so that you would be able to do it within a decade or a bit more. So I came right at that time, that was back in 2012 or 13, and this is where we started the journey of DEI within Accenture. Today, it's something that is totally embedded, totally normal, but it is a KPI that everyone, especially leaders, are accountable for. We don't do DEI just for doing it, right? We do it for a purpose. And in a specific technology company that we are, innovation is at the center of our business. And we cannot innovate if we take the exact same people who have done the exact same thing. You get innovation through diversity, and that has been at the core. Aside from, it's the right thing to do. Whether you are a man or a woman, you are first and foremost a human, right? And you need to be given equal chances.
We'll get back to equal chances, but I think I think sometimes the controversial aspects of setting objectives and targets, whilst I think the principle of it is laudable, sometimes we run the risk of falling into what we call positive discrimination. Mm-hmm. So how do you strike the balance between avoiding falling into that trap where you're promoting people just because you have a KPI to meet?
That is exactly what we should not do. Just promoting or just giving chances based on gender, but it could be based on other things, based on sexual orientation, based on race, based on everything. For me, that's not equality. The way I see it is, how do you level the playing field for everyone? Basically, it's not about nominating or promoting women for promoting women. It's about making sure that you provided the appropriate training and the appropriate environment for that woman or that person in particular to grow to the point that you can consider the skills and the competence of that person. That is what the journey is about. It's not about just stating that we need X number of women and we need X number of men in an executive committee, for example. It's about making sure that when you get to that point, you have a sufficient population of women and men from which you can choose based on what are the skills that you require for the positions and who is a better fit for that position.
Have you felt that, I sometimes I speak to sort of younger women now progressing through their career, and they have what we call the infamous imposter syndrome, or we have self-limiting beliefs that hinder our progress. Do you encounter that? within the organization?
Yeah, I did encounter that within myself, actually. I think I'm no different from anyone else. Yeah, I've questioned a lot. I mean, I'm 100% certain that every time I applied for a job, I went through the same process than anyone else. But when chosen, I always had the question of, why me? Why is it? Why did they choose me? Am I fit for the job? Am I going to fall? Am I going to be a good fit for that particular position? Yes, I've had that myself, and I know probably many women have that, unfortunately. I think I learned to accept that yeah, and maybe it is good sometimes to question ourselves. For me, it actually encourages me to do better. And maybe it's about proving myself to myself, finally. Yes. I do take it as a fact that every time I have something, I do ask myself whether I deserve that.
Really? Even
yes.
to this
even
day?
Even today.
How do you overcome it? By accepting it, I guess. By accepting
it. By just accepting that it's a process, that at any step it will come, and I will have to answer that question to myself.
Have you felt that, whether yourselves or speaking to other women, progressing in their career, that they struggle in Mauritius because we live in quite a patriarchal society? Has that been an issue in terms of, they feel that they have to make sacrifices because they're expected to play the traditional role of, wife and mother in addition to have a career?
Definitely. There is that bit of belief that I don't know where it comes from, really. But yeah, I think there are a lot of expectations for women, and probably more expectations. It's probably a bit unfair sometimes, or maybe it's ourselves, it's women themselves who put that on their shoulders and share a greater sense of responsibility.
And we feel guilty sometimes with it. Am I spending less time with my kids? Or
exactly, we do feel guilty, and we do feel that we need to do much more. I mean, a very simple example, my children are preteens. Actually, when I travel, I make sure that there is food in the fridge for the week that I won't be around.
Really?
Exactly. I do think, what would happen if I didn't do that? Well, they would find their way, certainly. But I make it a point to prepare everything whenever I need to travel, and make sure that everything is sorted before I leave. Basically, I don't think that anyone is asking me that, but it's a standard that I'm imposing on myself, actually. Yeah. I've read that a number of times, that we need to let actually fathers be fathers.
Exactly. I'm lucky enough to have an incredibly supportive husband, but sometimes at the moment he's not in Mauritius, so I feel like I'm investing more time and I'm enjoying it, but then I get the impression that when he is around, maybe I naturally take a step back because I know he's around. So I think that there's, as you said, if you let them be fathers, they will naturally take on the role, and I'm sure they'll enjoy it too.
Probably.
Yeah.
For me, it's the other way around. My husband would say that I step in everything.
Do you tend to be a perfectionist, you would say, or?
Yes, a bit too much sometimes, and I know that I have very high expectations of everyone, and I like to probably hit a 10 on 10 on everything, and I also know that, my children would be okay if I didn't do 10 on 10. If I stopped at 6, they would be okay as well.
Yeah. I'm sure. And going back to the workplace, would you say you're like that in the workplace as well? What kind of leader are you? I've always seen you very smiling. I cannot picture you being cross with anyone.
Oh my God, you need to. No, I know. Maybe not cross. I've learned actually to tone down my. Yes, I've learned to tone down. I've learned to be, No, you don't learn compassion and empathy, but you actually know that a leader needs to be compassionate and demonstrate empathy, right? So sometimes part of it comes naturally, part of it you have to build. I've changed a lot from my early days of my career, where, I I have always been very ambitious. I have always aimed quite high. And at the beginning, funnily, I did not understand people who were not actually like me. So that has been quite a journey for me to actually accept that people have different, not really ambition, but different, they want different things in their lives. They have different
at a
paces,
different pace as well, perhaps.
different pace, different things, and different levels of, I can't find the word, but exigence. I don't know how we say that in English.
I understand what you mean. Yeah.
And actually managing a team means that you have to pick up on the strengths of everyone, but also understand the weaknesses of everyone. In the same way, actually, that I came to accept my weaknesses. I mean, and I know them quite perfectly. Those who know me, they know them. They know as well. But I think managing a team is really about understanding the strengths of everyone and making sure that we are making the best out of the team. Do I get upset with my teams? Yes, I do. I do. And sometimes I tend to go on the other extreme, regrettably. And then I try to backpedal.
But you're just human at the end of the day. You can't.
I think everyone is human.
Of course.
And we are all prone to making mistakes. And being a leader is also about accepting that we are not perfect. And I'm not perfect. I'm far from being perfect. I make mistakes like any humans do, actually. And owning that is actually quite a difficult thing that I've learned.
Yes, I think we had a leadership series 2 years ago when we just started the podcast, and almost everyone without fail said the biggest lesson they learned is humility. Almost all of them said when they were young, they were, very brash and very, not arrogant, but very exigeant, as you said. And with age, with wisdom, you start to realize, actually, maybe I should try to see things from their perspective. And, some things are not black and white. There are different shades of gray.
Totally. I totally agree with you. I think that a leadership journey is about understanding that. And humility is indeed a very important word. A lot of leaders make mistakes, and I know that I've seen that they make mistakes because I would say, like for politicians, power gets into the head. And I'm absolutely scared of getting to that point where I make a huge mistake because I was not careful, actually.
Yes. Or you only saw your point of view.
I only saw my point of view. And, the more you grow in an organization, the more I would say you have less friends, but you have less and less people who are courageous enough actually to give you a different point of view than yours. And that is a problem. Part of it comes from the fact that as you grow in an organization, you have a broader view, and therefore, most of the time, your opinion would take certain aspects or certain facts or certain contexts that others don't have.
Sure.
So yeah, most of the time, probably your point of view would be right, just because you have a lot more context. But still, you still have less and less people, subordinates, I mean, who actually are inclined towards giving you different point of views. So that is a point, an angle that every leader, as you grow, you need to be mindful of and create that framework, that environment that people feel comfortable giving you anything.
Yeah, any feedback, whether positive
any feedback,
or,
yes,
or
whether negative or positive. And this is actually this is what makes the richness of a company, of a society, actually. It's having people who can give you another point of view.
Yes, to have healthy debates.
Healthy debates,
yeah.
To have feedback, to take it positively. And to actually learn, I'm still young, I need to progress, so I need people to give me feedback.
Yes.
I need people to give me other point of views. It's easier probably in the professional world, in my professional environment, than in my personal life. It's always easy to take feedback professionally. It's less easier to take feedback from friends, from families, from
without creating some sort of awkwardness. Or,
exactly.
Yeah. Or sometimes you feel that it's not my place to say something. I don't know the whole story. And you said something that really struck with me, and I felt that many times over the past 5 years. You said that as you have less friends, as you grow up the ladder, sometimes it can feel very lonely.
It is. Being at the top is very lonely.
Yeah. How do you deal with it? Do you have a support network outside of work or within work? How do you?
I have the chance to work in a big company. So I may be the boss in Mauritius, I may be the boss in Vietnam, but I have bosses, I have other bosses, and I have a lot of inspiring people around me. So in the organization itself, I have a lot of people I look up to. So I establish those contacts, and I leverage on those conversations to actually build my support system in a way within Accenture, I would mean. But if I look at it at the frontiers of Mauritius, yes, it's a lonely place to be.
Especially that it's a as you know, it's a very small country. Everybody knows everyone. Exactly. Everybody knows everyone else's business. I remember when I was in London, I was working for a bank, and one of the assistants was originally from Jamaica. And I was telling her one of the reasons why I was glad to have left then is that I was a bit fed up with growing up with the gossip culture.
Yeah.
And she said to me, Joanne, it's an island thing.
Yes.
It's not just Mauritius, it's all small islands.
Yes, that's true. There are some specificities in Mauritius, and sometimes it is quite daunting. The way I go around it is that I limit my interactions to Accenture. You know, sometimes you just need to pick and choose. And this is what I try to do, but a lot of things you can't avoid, unfortunately.
Yes, yeah, it's part of
you can't avoid.
DNA.
It's part of our DNA, and out of the many things we have, unfortunately, to live with it.
Yeah.
This is the part that I miss from Europe, actually, the part of being incognito, that everyone minds his or her own business, and you can just go about living your life. Yeah. Here, I think there are a lot of things you need to be careful about. That adds to the complexity of being on an island thing, you say.
I mean, it is a double-edged sword, because I think one of the things we discussed last week is that on the flip side of that is because no one else knows anyone else's business, it can get quite lonely. Yeah. So there's two sides.
There are two sides of. There are two sides of it. You know, in Mauritius, when you have an issue, everyone would turn up to help you. That's the positive side of being on the island. Exactly. And at the end of the day, it's a question of choice, right? It's a question of what do you choose? Are you choosing the island life with the pros and cons, or are you choosing another country with the pros and cons? And it's a personal choice.
Absolutely. And I think that initially, and I think we've spoken about that to so many people, I don't necessarily want to talk about it in detail, but one of the things that we often ask after the pandemic is the famous brain drain. And someone said to me a few months ago that we should stop talking about how do we stop them from going. I don't think it's necessarily a valid conversation about if a young person wants to explore life abroad and work in Luxembourg or Malta or Ireland, maybe we should let them go, and then maybe they will come back just like we've come back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Again, it's a question of why the person is leaving. If it's a question of I want to have more career opportunities, I want to have a more professional experience, I want to see another environment, maybe a more complex one, I think it is a valid reason for anyone to make that choice to leave the country and go get that sort of experience. And I would totally tally, and I would never discourage someone to leave the country for those reasons. What I don't agree to is when the reason is I want to go abroad because I want to make more money, or I'm going abroad because I feel that there is no meritocracy here. I feel that I need to know X, Y, Z to be able to progress. That for me is going for the wrong reasons. And these are the things that we need to fix. We need to make sure that the economic environment here is good enough for people to have a good standard of living and a good quality of life. We need to make sure that whoever has skills and competence is given the right opportunities to grow his own career without having to have the, I wouldn't say political network, but any network that would influence actually the career for the wrong reasons. This is that we need to fix actually.
And hopefully we will be on the right track. There's
Hopefully,
a lot of expectations.
A lot of expectations. We have experienced a change of government, a massive rejection of the past policies, and a lot of things have been said. I don't want to get into that, but I know there are a lot of expectations, and I think fixing the brain drain will necessarily go by fixing the reasons why people were leaving.
I completely agree with you, and I think this ties in nicely to the last value that I think you care very strongly about, as do I, is the concept of equity. I think it's very easy sometimes to confuse equality and equity. There is an overlap, but it's slightly different. And in your organization, I understand you invest tremendously in giving back to society. Yes. So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about how you help achieve equity within the broader community as opposed to just Accenture.
Yeah, well, I think within Accenture we've talked about specific programs for specific groups, specific programs for women to actually help them address the imposter syndrome, amongst others. But we do also have our global program, which is called Skills to Succeed. Okay. And I relate that to equity in the sense that we make sure that we are giving the right technology or the right chances for everyone to progress. In Mauritius specifically, we've worked with a number of organizations, Lisier dans la main for the blind children, equipping actually them with a lab of technology equipment specifically designed for blind children. Wow. So that they can learn IT skills. And the point is that to give them to make them have those skills so that they can find a job one day, and a job that goes beyond maybe manual work, artisanal and things like that. We've also worked with l'École des Sourds, equipping them with a learning platform for distance learning that came after the confinements, COVID. We worked massively with the Rainbow Foundation for people with disabilities, children with disabilities. Again, it's about leveling the playing field and giving them what they need to build their skills so that they can have a job one day. And this is where actually Accenture comes in. We've sponsored a lot of computer labs, technology labs with specific equipments for specific groups of people.
And what has been the response from these initiatives? Because all the ones that you described to me obviously is in line with Accenture's business line, so it's all technology driven. Yes. So how have you seen the feedback from your programs?
Usually these NGOs are very happy when we do such things, and it doesn't represent a lot in the scale of Accenture. Right. It's just a small thing, but we always see a lot of gratitude from those children, from those people. I would say one of the highlights of my career, strangely, it's not when we've signed multi-dollar deals. It's after COVID, when we implemented that learning platform for the school for the deaf children, the School of the Deaf in Beaubassin. Okay. We had a ceremony for them to kind of launch that platform. They are children who are deaf and who don't speak, des sourds muets. Mm-hmm. I always say, I've never seen so much gratitude in the eyes of those children. Wow. I've worked, this year I have it's my 23rd year of career, professional life. The best highlight of my career is this one, when these children were thanking me. That sentiment, that feeling that we had that day, actually it all made sense. And we had a lot of people working for that project, and it was over and above their normal work. Sure. We remember at that time the MBC was doing distance learning when the schools were closed on the TV. Yeah. The problem is that there were no subtitles.
So you don't know, you don't have a clue what they're talking. You just see images.
When you don't hear, I mean, you can only see the images. You don't have a clue what is happening.
Yeah.
So we tried to get those videos and upload them on a learning. This is what we did on a learning platform, so that those children could see those videos. And we used AI at that time to make the subtitles. Problem is that any AI cannot. When teachers in Mauritius, they use a mix of English, French, and Creole.
Creole as well.
And any AI actually fails when you are dealing with 3 languages.
Right.
So we had over 200 people listening to those.
Just to be able to try to do the subtitles.
And yes, to do the subtitles over, a few weekends.
So they did that in their own time?
They did that in their own time manually, and with such a passion. So for me, the pride was twofold. Pride for our people, for my teams who had done that, but pride looking at the outcome.
Because sometimes you feel like with your, when you have a CSR fund and you're just giving away money, whilst the NGOs do need the money, well, I want to say it's just money. Obviously, it's not just money, it's valuable. Yes. But when you participate in a project and when you see the outcome, it's all the more inspiring. And as you said, those kids, maybe that has set them off on a path where they can feel, actually, I can be anything tomorrow. I have a disability, but now I know that I can be an engineer, a tech engineer if I want to.
Exactly. So that was the point. And yes, money means something, but I think we need to complement that as well with using the skills of our people.
Wonderful. I have a last question for you. Sometimes it's my first question, but sometimes I leave it to last. What is your why?
That's what is my why? My why is actually I want to leave a legacy, but most importantly, I want my children to be proud of me. This is my why.
Oh, thank you. I'm sure they are already.
Hope so.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you to you, and thank you for the opportunity.